It's really difficult to find great executives. Spirit Consulting helps organizations find all-star executives and hire the right one using work psychology, so you can serve more customers and grow your business. To get a free quote, go to spiritmco.com. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Middle-Aged Men podcast, where we discuss all things middle-aged. Kevin, really excited to connect with you today on the Virtuous Heroes podcast, and just easing the tension a little bit this morning. I know just from doing some background information on you, just really impressed with what you've been able to accomplish in your career. For those of our guests listening today that don't know your background, can you kick us off with the first question, which is, who are you?
I'm Kevin Boulding, President and CEO for the YMCA of Central Florida. I've been here now for about 6 months and getting adjusted to a new community. I am a dad of a beautiful little 9-year-old crazy girl. I am a half-crazed fantasy football player. And a struggling golfer.
Awesome. Well, you said 9-month-old baby girl.
Oh gosh, I say 9 month, 9-year-old.
9 years. Sorry, you probably did. I am hard at hearing at times.
Yeah.
My wife Hannah and I are expecting, and
wonderful.
I have 2 boys from a prior marriage. They're 9 and 7. Well, no, now 10. He just turned 10 on the 27th. So 10 and 7-year-old boys. And, with the frat house that we've been running over here, we've just been praying that we would have a baby girl to be able to, impart some wisdom into our family.
Yes.
So that's awesome. Granted, I'm blessed with a daughter. What can you tell me about being the father over a girl, since I have no experience in that domain?
Girl dads rule. I think having a daughter. Now, granted, I don't have a son, so I don't have the comparison. But I'll tell you, man, having a daughter is really what it's all about. It's this amazing little force that's in your life that forces you to look through things through a lens that we as men just don't look at every day. Watching her grow, and I think this is the same with being a parent in general, but watching her grow and watching her become this little lady in front of us has just been amazing. So enjoy that ride. It's phenomenal. The other thing that you hear, and you've probably heard this before, is when you get old, it's great having daughters. Your sons, they'll send the money to put you in the home. Your daughters are the ones that'll take care of you, though. You gotta have a daughter, and it's the best thing in the world.
Well, thank you for sharing, and that's excellent. And we are. We were at first thinking that we weren't going to find out the sex, but I think we're not going to be able to wait out the rest of the 8 months. So I think it's a little bit further down the pregnancy, but so thank you for encouraging me and inspiring me in that way, Kevin. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to the leadership position that you're in today?
Sure. I don't believe any of us get to where we are completely on our own. It's if we've all been blessed to have a number of coaches or mentors or great bosses or pastors or all the different people in our lives that help to make us the people who we are. I was just sharing with someone yesterday, you always get asked the question of, well, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were young and when you were growing up? I always thought that I wanted to be the milkman. The milkman, when I was growing up, was the coolest guy in the world. I was living in DC. We were living in an apartment building, and the milkman would come in and drop off the milk. He drove around this cool truck. He had this cool, white outfit. He was always crisp and clean. He was always smiling. I remember that guy, always smiling, always happy. And I said, well, I want to be something. I want to do something where I'm always smiling and always happy. And through the eyes of the lens of a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old, that's what you start to see. So, I've had the pleasure the great benefit of being influenced by lots of great people along my life, who have helped me to get to where I am and helped me to kind of create the person that I am that's beyond the title. Now, from a title standpoint, I've been in a CEO role now for, I guess, now going on 6 years. Prior to coming to Orlando, I was in the Pittsburgh YMCA Association, and was there for 12 years. But as some of us do in the Y, I've been around a little bit. I started off in Virginia. Virginia is my home. I, was born in DC, but primarily raised in Lynchburg, Virginia. I got introduced to the YMCA there after another job right out of school. But I started in this work of kind of community service, youth building, because I just believe we're put here on this planet to make a difference, especially in the lives of kids. So I was running an after-school enrichment program for minority sixth graders. I absolutely loved that work coming out of school. It was great. It was fulfilling. Probably wasn't making the most amount of money at all, but I loved every minute of the work that I was doing. And in doing that work, I did that for 2 years. I was trying to figure out what to do next. I was at a crossroads of potentially going to work within the local school district, or starting to make a move into the Y. My local YMCA in my city, in Lynchburg, there were essentially 2 YMCAs. There was the traditional YMCA that most of us know about, and then there was the Y that my mom and aunts and uncles grew up in. It was a Y that when Lynchburg was still segregated, it was the only Y that you could go to if you were an African American. So that was the Y that was in my community, that I ended up having an opportunity to go work for. And when I was at that crossroads of trying to figure out what to do, I remember talking to a friend of mine, a guy named James. And I said, well, James, I'm trying to figure out which job to take, which one to go. Do I go the more secure route of being a teacher, or do I go work for this non-for-profit leading up this little small Y? I don't know how to lead a Y, regardless of the size of it. And I told him what I was thinking, and I was thinking about this song that he and I used to sing when we were in the gospel choir at University of Virginia. And the song said, "Stand up for right, join in the fight, be a soldier for Jesus." And it talked about how communities were under this siege of war, and you had to step in to help. And I was telling him about this, and he was quiet on the other end of the phone. And I said, well, James, are you listening to me? He said, man, I'm listening. He said, God's talking to you and you're not listening. So I'm going to shut up. I don't want to make any more noise. So I went after the job the next day. And the rest of it has been almost kind of picture book. I started working for the Y, running this small itty bitty little YMCA. We were open from 11 until 7, and me and the other full-time program staff member, we then cleaned it every day. And I just thought that's just the way things were supposed to be, and I loved it. Once again, it wasn't about money. It was about the fact that I felt that we were making a difference in that community. My community. It wasn't just some random community. It was my community, and I knew those kids who were coming in that Y. So I did that for a couple years. I got introduced to the larger Y, met some people who said, hey, we want to, help you get an opportunity here, or help you get an opportunity there, and some great coaching along the way. And that led to an opportunity in Detroit. I was in Detroit for 10 years. I thought I was going to go there for 3. I thought when I got there, oh, dear God, I've moved 10 hours away from the closest family that I have. If I can only survive 3 years, then I'll move back closer. Well, 3 years quickly turned into 10. Did some really good stuff there, met some extremely great people there. But as all things happen, there was a time for a change, a need for a change. And so I wanted someplace that looked nothing like Detroit in my next stop. Landed in Miami, looks nothing like Detroit. Was in Miami for 3 years through some progressive leadership opportunities there, running different size. All of this has been with the YMCA. My wife, she and I had just met right before I left Detroit. She came down about a year and a half into my time in Miami. We wanted to start a family. We wanted to get married, but we realized that we just wanted to do it in a different place other than Miami. So this wonderful opportunity came up in Pittsburgh. We had a great stay in Pittsburgh for 12 years. Never thought I'd be in Pittsburgh for 12 years, but it turned into a place where it was a great place for us. It was a great place for family, which was what we wanted. Our daughter was born there, and now these last few years, this last few months here in Orlando. So it's been great. It's at the forefront of it all for me has been what's the best place for my family to be, whether it's the family that we wanted to start or the family that we have. But as I will kind of wrap it, the important thing for me along the way, or the thing that really helped me get to where I have been now, is there have been so many people that poured into me over these years. So many people that kind of shepherded my progress along the way to help me to not make some of the mistakes that they made, or to help to build on the great things that they've been able to do.
Yeah, so two things came to mind when you were talking through that. The first is, in the Old Testament, Nehemiah, who rebuilds the city walls, that whenever you're stationed in when you're making an impact for fortifying a city and doing community building, when it's your own community, it's that much more impactful to want to dive in and do that work. So I think that, it really resonated with me as you were talking about the first leadership role that you had at the Y. And then the other thing that came to mind was just thinking about, as you mentioned, you went up to Detroit, you thought you were going to be there 3 years, you stayed there 10, and you met your wife there. It's interesting, sometimes that we get sent into assignments where we're thinking it's one thing, but
Yes.
God has other plans for our lives.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing is that, you moved around quite, you've got to see many parts of our country. I'm kind of a lot more boring in that I've really just been in Illinois throughout the majority of my life. So just thinking about, the executives that may be listening today that are, either in the middle of being reassigned to another part of the country, what advice could you give, Kevin, for the sake of people that, are moving to a new town and being able to get acclimated to the community?
Well, I think there's two pieces to that question. So the first piece is the advice towards the move. The second piece is the advice towards the getting acclimated. I think the first piece on the move, I think you've got to be intentional about all of your different stops that you will try to make. You have to have a career plan in place. For me, I knew what level of influence I wanted to have in an organization. Not necessarily fixated on title, but I knew I wanted to have a certain degree of influence in the organization. And to a certain degree, obviously, it does say that you need to have a certain position in an organization, but not specifically you have to be in the CEO seat. And so in doing so, my career track has been with a mindset that each level that I've tried to progress through in the movement, and we always say in YMCA, the movement, it's always been with a plan. It's understanding that as I am at more of a grassroots level, those stints can be a little shorter. They can be a 3 to 5 year stint. Whereas when you're starting to make a move at middle to upper management levels, at least in my organization, there's an understanding that you should be in those roles for 5 to 7+ years, because it takes that amount of time to have the impact that you want to have on your organization. So if you look at that and say, all right, if I'm here and I want to get to here, and both when you start your career and when you want to end it, then it becomes a mathematical formula of saying, well, I can make X number of moves to get to this place by the time that I want to retire. So I think that's the first piece, is having this strategy in place around making sure that your moves aren't just frivolous moves, that your moves have some intentionality behind them. I think the second piece around, well, how do you start to get indoctrinated and acclimated to a community? I believe I don't move to a community that I don't want to be a part of. Now I tell you, my mom really struggles to understand this whole thing. My mom is the type where, Kevin, you get someplace and you just stay there. You're there for life. My brother would say probably the same thing. My brother can't understand the moves that I've made. He would love to move to where I am, but he's afraid that I'll leave once he gets there. But I enjoy getting to know new people and new cultures and new cities. I enjoy being able to find my way around new places. And so I think if you can go into a city with the mindset that you're going to go there and enjoy the entirety of the city, both the pretty parts and the parts that are not so pretty, I think you have to go there with that mindset. You can't just go there and think, well, I'm just going to go there really with no plan of how long I'm going to be there. And then I'm just going to stay in my rental unit and not come out. And not that rental units are bad, but especially people who are thinking, well, I'm just going to get a corporate place or whatever and just kind of stay there. No, get involved, get acclimated, get adjusted, be a part of the community, have some purpose, some fun with the opportunity beyond what you do from 9 to 5 or beyond.
Have you been feeling unfulfilled? You want to be happy, but just continue to struggle. One of the best ways to experience joy is by caring for the homeless. A charity I've grown to love, River of Light, food rescues 1 million meals per year for the needy in Chicago. Imagine how that makes you feel, knowing that you're helping feed children and veterans. To make a tax-deductible donation, visit riveroflightchicago.org. Again, riveroflightchicago.org. No one should go to bed hungry. Awesome. Well, lots of wisdom there. And also, just helping my own self, walking into Spirit Consulting, having bought out my book of business from my father and launching this management consultancy in 2018, which, later this year is going to put me, into like the middle tier of what you had talked about of the 5 to 7 year time frame. And just thinking about just that own journey and how to, be kind to yourself for like that. Sometimes we don't always can execute as swiftly as we may be hoping, but it is like that. I could see how what you're saying of the 5 to 7 year to really be able to like make that impact and impression on the organization that you're looking to as you're at the higher ranks within an organization. So that was very helpful. And thank you for sharing that. So before we dive into the virtue pieces and more into your work at the YMCA of Central Florida, want to kind of talk through some of your struggles in leadership. What have been some of the vices that you're either overcoming now or you've overcome in your life in order to be the leader that you are, Kevin?
Yeah, it's I appreciate that. I think it's, once again, none of us got here alone. And I think none of us got to the places that we are without some type of hurdle to cross over the time. I think back to, I am a notorious procrastinator. It's probably one of the worst. But there's something about that pressure to deliver on a fixed timeline that brings out the best in me. Now, the people who I work around, they absolutely hate it. I put out a monthly, I hate to say newsletter because I think newsletters are just boring. So I put out a monthly, almost blog-ish type thing that goes out to all of our members, all of our team members, just really all of our different supporters. And our communications department helps me to make sure that it gets sent out through all the different people that it needs to go to. but they depend upon me, obviously, to write it. I love writing it, but there's something about, I can't write that thing in advance. I just can't. They'd love for me to do that so they could figure out what other imagery they want to put with it based upon the theme that I'm writing. But there's something about knowing that this first Friday piece that goes out, somewhere around that first Thursday evening, it all clicks. So I am number one, I am a notorious procrastinator. I think the second one that I put out there as advice, one that I'm working through, but one that I still struggle with. I trust too quickly on one hand, and I am hard to forgive people who break that trust. So I know that on the trust side, I should definitely scrutinize a bit more those to try to make sure that the trust is deserved. Maybe if I did that, then I wouldn't be as hard on the people who break the trust. But yeah, we all have our issues. Those are mine.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've, throughout the life of the podcast, kind of talked about all sorts of my issues and dysfunctions in my life that I've had to overcome. I think one of the ones that I'm really struggling with or just that has been brought to my attention is like, we adopted a pug puppy in August, and first real pet that I've had in my life. Yeah. And so in watching the dog and the way that she always, no matter what, is just so excited when people like enter into her sphere, it's just so inspiring, and something that I would love to be. But the truth of the matter is, if I've got issues going on or work problems that I'm addressing, like sometimes when my kids come home, I'm not that type of loving person that's like totally just like so excited and just being able to be present in the moment of the gift of life that's in front of you. And so that's something that I've been working on, of like trying to intentionally be, joyful and present in the moment when my loved ones are being able to enter in the room. And a work in progress. But as you were talking about procrastination, the thing that came to my mind, Kevin, is that, it seems to be that if you're giving a blog on the month, it's, obviously you're a present person. And so you want to live it. And ultimately, if you're just too focused on writing what is going on, it's hard for you to really be present in those moments to experience the highs and lows of what you're experiencing from your time at the Y. So being able to just like really live it, so then at the end of the month that you have the opportunity to be able to talk about what you've been experiencing at a deep level. So I can understand that, but I sympathize with you in that. And then as it relates to trusting too quickly, can you think about, and obviously I'm not looking for you to kind of just like bust people in particular, but can you maybe give us an example for those that may not be resonating here of where like this quick trust has led to you being burned?
Yeah. I think the best example that I could give is I think I do a really good job of reading people. I think I do a really good job of understanding how people are wired, how people are driven, what motivates people, and how to connect to people. Now, in doing that, sometimes, especially in the work environment, that's just not enough. That's just not enough to create the foundation of a working relationship. In the work environment, I think there also has to be, especially at higher levels of influence in an organization, there also has to be some kind of proof in the pudding. There also has to be some proof of being able to deliver on some objective, some outcome. So that's where I've definitely slipped in the past. I've had people in my sphere who I just felt a good connection with. I felt that, hey, this person's a good person at heart, at mind. a good person that I can now start to bring closer into my space and closer into how I might trust them to get X, Y, and Z done. But there have been times where that perception of who a person is hasn't been the same amount of time that I might spend on trying to ascertain that perception of that person, of how they're wired, how they're driven, the quality of who they are as a person. I haven't put the same amount of time on trying to understand exactly how they deliver upon a product around some objective at work. And then that's what causes the problem. And for me, I think part of the issue around being hard to forgive sometimes is I've given that person so much credit. I've given so much of myself, I believe, in establishing that relationship and trying to understand who they are, that it hurts me when they don't deliver. Now, others might approach it in a completely opposite way of saying, no, let me see how you deliver. Let me see how you perform at work. Let me see how you can hit this objective and that objective. And then from that point on, then everything will move forward. It's probably a safer way, at least in a work environment. But in a YMCA environment, where so much of what we do is about heart, I lead heart first, and sometimes mind comes behind it, and I've got to find a way to make sure that I at least bring both of them along a similar trajectory.
Well, as long as we're on that topic, can you tell us a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish at the YMCA of Central Florida, and why is that important?
Yeah, it's here. I was attracted to this opportunity because this Y has this tremendous brand, both in the community of Central Florida, as well as this tremendous brand within our Y, within the larger YMCA of the USA movement. This Y has grown, has done some great things, has established itself in multiple communities here. And so all of that work is tremendously inspirational to me. What I see as my opportunity here is to try to take that foundation of work now and elevate it. Especially with the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic on our organization, we're at a place now where we have to start to reinvent ourselves. The pandemic cut our revenues in half. The pandemic and the impact of the pandemic made us cut our staff levels in half, made us have to walk away from some of the facilities that we had that were serving some of the communities that we were in. Our commitment at the time when some of those sites had to be closed is that we were closing a facility, but not necessarily walking away from a community. So we have to be more creative now. And that's what I look forward to doing now, is trying to find a more creative way, a more sustainable way to be equally as impactful in communities now that don't have a standing physical presence, as we are impactful in a community with a building that has a physical presence. That forces us to be much more creative. It forces us to be much more entrepreneurial. We have to operate with this dual bottom line mindset of making sure that we can operate in the black and do what we have to do so we can invest in our people, invest in our communities, invest in our assets. But we also have to do so with this mission-focused mindset. Trying to manage both the mission and the money of this work is incredibly important to me. But it's that type of work that defines us as a Y, not just some other type of organization that's out there trying to simply make profit.
So as you were saying about, having to be innovative in the during an economic challenge. Can you maybe talk about some of the things that you're doing in order to counterbalance those limitations?
Yeah, we and some of this is not new news, especially for my nonprofit peers. Um, but it's a different way of us thinking here. I'll say it that way. We understand now that we have to take this mindset of a Y without walls. So much of our work in the past has been so facility driven, that understanding that if we had a facility, then now we can deliver these programs and services to the community. We're trying to flip that completely on its head now. The old days of creating multiple YMCAs and multiple communities are just that now, old days. When we, what's different for the Y is when we add a building into a community, we're making essentially a covenant with that community for a 30, 40, 50-year engagement out of that fixed location. Communities are changing greatly. I can't imagine too many communities where you could say, all right, I'm going to put a fixed dot right here because this community around that dot serves our needs and we can serve those needs, and then know and feel comfortable with 30 to 40 years later that those same needs are going to be there, that we're still going to be the relevant type of organization for that. So we're trying to figure out now, how can we be more forward thinking? How can we be more forward thinking and understanding that communities change, that we have to be more malleable in what our program delivery models are going to be. We have to be more future forward on what our program models are going to be. We understand now that a big change for us is we have taken this mindset that we have a product, we try to give people this all-inclusive product, and then price it in a way that works for that community. Well, that sounds fine, but in today's world, people want customization. You can't go to a car wash without the ability to pick 6 different options for how you want your car washed. So a Y membership is a similar type of commodity that we've got to give people the ability to customize it that's unique for them and their community, them and their family. How we interface with a family of, a nuclear family, mom, dad, 3, 4, 5 kids or so, is completely different from how we might interact with a single mom with 1 child, or the 22-year-old who's just starting in the workspace and struggling with college debt. So we can't give people a singular product and expect that to serve all, when we know that all looks so different today. So it's, for us, the change is about being forward looking. The change is about customization. The change is about understanding that if we can do all of that through the lens of our customer, and at the same time invest heavily in our people, then we should be able to be more successful going forward.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. I was actually talking with a colleague this morning on just like what he had done last night, and we were talking about television and the way that the internet is just breaking down that industry. And it sounds like a similar challenge in that, you can go to Hulu now, and you can go to independent, sporting, like whether that be the NBA or the NHL or the NFL, and get sports packages there instead of just getting your nuclear, like, okay, I'm going to pay $100-something odd a month for this television package, and that's what it is. You could break that part in so many different avenues at this point. It sounds like, a similar challenge as the different segments of customers that you're serving, and how you have to be mindful about that to be relevant. But thinking, Kevin, too, like, why is that important to be providing these programs, and why does that matter to you?
It matters to me, and it matters to the Y, because for us, mission is at the forefront of everything. We were founded not on the principles of trying to get people to work out more. or around how many miles can you do on your spin bike. At the center of the why, it's all about building communities and investing in communities and finding ways to make people stronger spiritually, mentally, physically. And so when we look at things through that lens, it creates a whole different set of priorities that sometimes can be fairly unique for our business. I've given thought over the years to doing something outside of the why. I thought, man, if I only had to worry about just making sure that my organization made money, the decisions I would have to make at work would be so much easier. But when you're focused on making sure that you are serving the community, when you're focused on making sure that that type of work is at the forefront, sometimes you make some really odd business decisions. You make odd decisions on the types of communities that you choose to invest in. Some would say some businesses would never invest in a certain type of community because they don't see the return on investment. For us, the return on investment is in people and in how you're helping those people live better, live happier. So the work for us is important because it's how we put mission at the forefront. That's the work that drives us. That's the work that we're rooted in. That's the work that will always keep us unique. That's the work that keeps us as YMCA staff members, and I would say almost any nonprofit staff member. That's the work that keeps those people coming in. It's definitely not because of salaries. You come in and you do the work that you do because that mission drives you to be successful and impactful in your community.
So Kevin, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing presently, either in your own life or through the Y? And from this answer, I would love to launch into prayer.
Yeah. Oh gosh, biggest struggles. Professionally, we know we have to pivot our organization fairly quickly. Much more quickly than what we're accustomed to doing. I don't like to name that particular ship that was slow to turn, but we're a lot like that infamous ship that was very slow to turn. We're a big organization. We have been doing this work for 175 years across the different communities that we serve. And sometimes when you're that type of an organization with that type of a history, it's difficult to make the quick pivots that you need to make, especially with the things that are driving it, like what we see here through the pandemic. So on the professional side, my biggest challenge is how do I get an organization of this size, with this track record, with this momentum going in a certain direction, to now pivot in that direction, kind of on a dime. I think we can do it. I know we can do it. It's just going to be incredibly challenging at times. Personally, I think the big challenge is trying to enjoy every day. The beautiful thing about my wonderful staff members here, as we talk about the different challenges that we have, they often say, well, Kevin, man, you're just smiling every day. How do you just keep smiling? How do you stay so optimistic? And I just keep telling, sun's still shining. Sun's still shining. You can't live in a place like South Florida or Central Florida and see this sunshine and see this beauty and then come to work with a frown. So one of our reasons for moving here was to be able to take advantage of every day a bit more, and not let work and the other distractions that adulting forces us to have. So we try to be intentional about what we do. We plan our fun family Fridays, and we have our bike rides downtown to go get ice cream, and we do that as a family. We need to do it a whole lot more. But that's the other big struggle for me, trying to make sure that we take advantage and enjoy this beautiful thing we have called life.
Awesome. So, Father God, we thank you for the opportunity to have fellowship in the oasis that you provide in the middle of our work days. Father, I just pray in Jesus' name that you would send the people and the resources that Kevin needs in order to be able to turn his ship, and that, Lord, that you would just continue to walk with him as you walked with Moses face to face, that you would show him those divine strategies that we need in our lives in order to be able to be life-giving to other people, especially when you're in the business of taking care of people, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And Father, I also pray that you are the way maker, Lord, and that you would make a way for Kevin and his family to really make sure that they're making those investments in each other, and being able to put work aside to be able to have those deep levels of connection and family, because it's at that place of strength and rest that you're able to even work the hardest. St. Paul had said, Lord, take this thorn out of my side 3 times, and God said no, because where you're weak, I am strong. And so, Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that we have, that when we get that scripture into our souls, to recognize that we don't have to do anything, that you are our beloved Father who just wants to pour down your love and blessings upon us, that the more that we accept our weaknesses and realize that even despite our weaknesses, that you still sent your son Jesus Christ to die for us so that we can have abundant lives, that we can come to a place of acceptance and gratitude for our weaknesses, because in our weaknesses you are strong, God. And so, Father, I just pray all this through the mighty name of our blessed Lord Jesus Christ. And I thank you, Father, for Kevin and the work that he's doing to bring your kingdom here on earth. And Kevin, just thank you so much for being on the Virtuous Heroes podcast, where we inspire virtuous leadership. Had so much fun being able to connect with you, learn more about the work that you're doing. And many blessings to you, and look forward to continuing the dialogue with you as well.
Thank you. Love being here.
Hey, Chris here. Hope you enjoyed the episode where we discussed all things going bald. Just joking. If you enjoyed the episode and the podcast, will you please subscribe on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify? Or you could also share it with a friend. That would be tubular. I hope you have an awesome day.